The moment I saw the notification from the bank, a cold certainty settled in my chest. My name was missing from the list of majority shareholders. I stared at the screen, blinking, waiting for the numbers to rearrange themselves, for some error to correct itself, but nothing changed. The company I had built with my sister was no longer ours, it was hers. The betrayal was not loud or dramatic. It was a quiet, calculated move, and the realization cut deeper than any argument ever could. I dialed her number, my hand steady, my mind racing. Each ring echoed the years we spent together. The sacrifices, the late nights, the promises. She answered, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. "I thought you'd find out," she said. No apology, no hesitation. Just a flat statement, as if this was always part of the plan. I asked her why. She spoke of opportunity, of growth, of making decisions for the company's future. But I heard only one thing: she did it alone. Without me, the office felt smaller. That day, I walked through the halls, past faces that looked away or pretended not to notice. My father's watch ticked on my wrist, a reminder of the legacy we were supposed to protect together. I thought about the deals we made, the risks we took, the way we promised never to let business come between us. Now, business was all that stood between us. I sat at my desk, staring at the company's operating system, the numbers, the charts, the projections, all meaningless now. I remembered the first day we opened our doors. How we laughed at the empty lobby, how we dreamed of filling it with people and purpose. It was never about the money, it was about building something that would last, something we could be proud of. I wondered if she remembered that. I called the bank, my voice measured, my words precise. I requested a freeze on all company transactions, citing irregular activity. The clerk on the other end hesitated, then complied. In that moment, I realized how quickly trust can evaporate, how easily years of partnership can unravel with a single decision. I sent an email to our lawyer, outlining the situation, attaching the documents, the proof. My hands shook, not with anger, but with something colder resolve. The silence in my office was heavy. I thought about calling my mother, but what would I say? That her children had become strangers, that the business meant more than blood. I replayed every conversation with my sister over the past year, searching for signs, for warnings I missed. There were disagreements, yes, but nothing that prepared me for this. I wondered if she felt betrayed, too, or if she had convinced herself this was the right thing to do. I left the office late, the city outside buzzing with life I no longer felt part of. The streets were familiar, but I walked them as if for the first time, uncertain, exposed. I thought about what would come next: the meetings, the negotiations, the lawyers, but mostly I thought about my sister. The person I trusted most had become the person I understood least. That night, I didn't sleep. I made lists, reviewed contracts, replayed memories. I tried to find a version of this story where we could talk, where we could fix what was broken. But every path led back to the same place. She had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. The company was frozen, but so was everything between us. I promised myself I would fight. Not just for the business, but for the truth of what happened. And for the first time, I wondered if winning would feel like losing. The day after the freeze, the company's corridors felt like a battlefield. People whispered in corners, glancing at me with uncertainty. I kept my head high, determined not to show how much the betrayal had shaken me. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Clients, board members, employees, all demanding answers I was not ready to give. I told myself I was protecting the business, but I knew I was also protecting myself from the humiliation of being blindsided by my own sister. I met with our lawyer in a sterile conference room, the air thick with tension. He reviewed the documents, his face unreadable. "This is serious," he said finally. "You did the right thing by freezing the company, but this will get ugly." I nodded. Already feeling the weight of what was coming, he outlined the steps. An emergency board meeting, a formal investigation, possible litigation. Each word made the situation more real, more irreversible. The board meeting was scheduled for the next morning. I spent the night preparing, combing through emails and contracts, searching for any clue that might explain my sister's decision. The more I looked, the clearer it became. This was not a spontaneous act. She had planned it, covering her tracks, building alliances. I wondered how long she had been waiting for the right moment, how many times she had smiled at me while plotting behind my back. At dawn, I arrived at the office early. The boardroom filled slowly, faces tight with apprehension. My sister entered last, her expression calm, almost defiant. She took her seat without looking at me. The chairman called the meeting to order, his voice steady but strained. I presented my case, laying out the facts with as much composure as I could muster. My sister listened in silence, her gaze fixed on the table. When it was her turn to speak, she did not deny what she had done. Instead, she justified it. She spoke of stagnation, of missed opportunities, of her vision for the company's future. She said she acted for the good of the business, not out of malice. Her words were measured, persuasive, almost convincing, but I saw through them. This was not about the company, it was about control. The board was divided. Some supported me, citing loyalty and tradition. Others sided with her, drawn to her ambition and confidence. The discussion grew heated, voices rising, accusations flying. I felt the room slipping away from me, the foundation of everything I had built crumbling under the weight of doubt and suspicion. My sister never raised her voice. She let others fight for her. Her silence more powerful than any argument. After the meeting, I retreated to my office, exhausted. My lawyer called, his tone cautious. "This is far from over," he said. "She's not backing down. You need to be ready for a long fight." I stared out the window, trying to imagine what victory would look like. Would it mean reclaiming the company or losing my sister forever? Messages from employees flooded my inbox. Some offered support, others demanded clarity. I realized that the conflict was no longer just between us, it was spreading through the entire organization, infecting every relationship, every decision. I began to question my own motives. Was I fighting for the company or for my pride? Was I trying to save the business or punish my sister? That night, I called my mother. I tried to keep my voice steady, to shield her from the worst of it, but she heard the pain anyway. She asked if we could fix things. I did not know how to answer. The gulf between us felt too wide, the damage too deep. I promised her I would try, but even as I said it, I wondered if reconciliation was still possible. The days that followed blurred together: meetings, phone calls, legal briefs. The company was frozen, but the conflict kept growing. Rumors spread, alliances shifted. Trust eroded. I watched as friends became adversaries, as years of teamwork unraveled in a matter of days. My sister and I avoided each other, communicating only through lawyers and intermediaries. Every interaction was a negotiation, every word a weapon. Despite everything, I refused to give up. I threw myself into the fight, determined to protect what we had built, but the cost was mounting. Sleep became a luxury, peace of mind a distant memory. I wondered how much more I could endure, how much more I was willing to sacrifice. The company was still mine, at least for now, but the victory felt hollow. The real battle was not for the business, but for the truth about what we meant to each other and what we had lost. As the week ended, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. The lines had been drawn, the choices made. I was no longer just fighting for the company. I was fighting for my own sense of justice, for the belief that trust and loyalty still mattered. And as I prepared for the next round, I knew that the hardest part was yet to come. The third week began with a summons to mediation. The board, desperate to halt the company's downward spiral, insisted we try to find common ground. I arrived early, reviewing talking points and legal advice, but none of it prepared me for sitting across from my sister in a sterile room, watched by lawyers and a mediator. She looked older, or maybe just more tired, her posture rigid but her eyes unwavering. It was the first time in weeks we'd been forced to face each other without a buffer. The mediator opened the session, urging us to speak honestly and listen. The words felt hollow. I laid out my grievances, the betrayal, the secrecy, the damage to our trust. She listened, jaw clenched. Then countered with her own justifications, the need for decisive leadership. Her frustration with my caution, her belief that the company needed bold moves to survive. The conversation quickly turned into a battle of narratives, each of us defending our actions, neither willing to concede. Hours passed. The mediator pressed us to consider the future. Not just the past. What do you want from each other? He asked. The question caught me off guard. I wanted my sister back, but I could not say it. Instead, I spoke of fairness, of restoring balance, of protecting the company. She responded with talk of vision, of progress, of not being held back by old promises. The gap between us felt insurmountable. During a break, I stepped outside, phone in hand, scrolling through messages from worried employees and anxious clients. The company's reputation was suffering. Deals were stalling, partners hesitating, uncertainty spreading like a virus. I realized that my fight with my sister was no longer just personal, it was threatening everything we had worked for. The pressure mounted, and for the first time, I questioned whether winning this battle would be worth the cost. Back in the room, the mediator tried a new approach. He asked us to remember why we started the company together. For a moment, the tension eased. My sister spoke about our early days, the excitement, the shared dreams. I remembered the pride in our parents' eyes, the sense of purpose that drove us. For a fleeting moment, I saw the person I used to trust, but the moment passed, replaced by the reality of our conflict. Negotiations dragged on. We debated shared distributions, leadership roles, future strategies. Every proposal was met with suspicion. Every concession felt like a defeat. Our lawyers argued over clauses and contingencies, each side digging in. The mediator grew frustrated, warning that if we could not reach an agreement, the board would intervene and possibly force a sale. The threat hung over us, unspoken but real. Late in the day, my sister made an offer, a compromise on shares, a joint leadership plan, a commitment to transparency. It was not what I wanted, but it was more than I expected. I hesitated, torn between pride and pragmatism. Accepting would mean letting go of my grievances, trusting her again, risking another betrayal. Refusing could destroy the company and whatever remained of our relationship. I asked for time to think. The mediator agreed, setting a deadline for our decision. As I left the building, the city felt unfamiliar, the future uncertain. I replayed the day's conversations, searching for clarity. I thought about our parents, about the employees depending on us, about the legacy we risked losing. The weight of responsibility pressed down, heavier than ever. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by documents and memories. I considered what mattered most: the company, my pride. My sister. I realized that no legal victory could restore what we had lost. The only way forward was through compromise, through rebuilding trust, however fragile. I drafted a response, careful, measured, leaving room for hope. As dawn approached, I sent my answer to the mediator. I was willing to try, to risk disappointment for the chance at something better. The outcome was uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of resolve. The next day would bring new challenges, new negotiations, but I was ready to face them, not just as a business partner, but as a brother determined to find a way back. The mediator's office was silent as we gathered for what everyone sensed would be the final round. I arrived with a copy of my proposal, the product of a sleepless night and 1,000 doubts. My sister entered moments later, her expression unreadable. The mediator wasted no time outlining the stakes. If we failed to reach an agreement today, the board would move forward with plans to dissolve the company or force a sale. The threat was real, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker in my sister's eyes. We began with the numbers. I offered a revised share split less than I wanted, more than she expected. She countered with her own terms, slightly softer than before. The lawyers exchanged glances, scribbling notes, but the mediator kept us focused. "This is your last chance," he reminded us, his voice low. "Decide what matters most." The room felt smaller, the air heavier, as we weighed each concession. Our discussion shifted from numbers to leadership. She wanted to lead, to set the vision. I insisted on checks and balances. A system that would prevent another betrayal. We argued, voices rising, frustration spilling over. At one point, I nearly walked out, but the mediator intervened, urging us to remember why we started this journey together. The reminder stung, but it also anchored me. I thought of the years we spent building, the sacrifices, the shared victories. I forced myself to listen, to see my sister not as an adversary, but as the person who once believed in us. She spoke, finally, about her fears of stagnation, of being overlooked, of losing herself in my shadow. Her words surprised me, cutting through my anger. I realized I had never truly heard her before, never understood the pressure she felt to prove herself. For the first time, I saw the cost of my own ambition, the ways I had contributed to the rift between us. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was different, less hostile, more honest. We returned to the table, our tone changed. The negotiations became less about winning and more about finding a way forward. We agreed on a joint leadership, structure, clear boundaries, regular communication, and a third-party auditor to oversee major decisions. It was not perfect, but it was real, an acknowledgement of our flaws and a commitment to doing better. The lawyers drafted the agreement, and we both signed, hands trembling. The mediator congratulated us, but the relief was muted. The wounds were still fresh, the trust fragile, as we left the office. My sister paused beside me. "We can't go back," she said quietly, "but maybe we can start again." I nodded, unsure what the future would bring, but willing to try. The company would survive, but more importantly, so would our relationship. Changed, but not broken. That evening, I returned to the office, the weight of the past week settling over me. Employees gathered in small groups, waiting for news. I called a meeting. Standing beside my sister as we explained the agreement, there were questions, doubts, even some anger, but there was also relief. The uncertainty was ending, and with it, the sense of chaos that had threatened to tear us apart. Afterward, I sat alone in my office, staring at the city lights. I thought about everything we had endured, the betrayal, the anger, the endless negotiations. I wondered if I would ever fully trust my sister again, or if she would ever forgive me for my own mistakes. But I knew one thing. We had chosen to fight for something bigger than ourselves, to rebuild what we had almost lost. The phone rang. It was my mother, her voice trembling with emotion. She told me she was proud, that she believed in our ability to heal. I listened, letting her words wash over me, feeling the first real sense of peace in weeks. The company was safe, at least for now. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, I was not afraid. As I prepared to leave, my sister knocked on the door. She didn't say much, just sat beside me in silence. It was enough. We were not the same people who started this journey, but we were still family, and that, I realized, was worth fighting for. The first Monday after the agreement felt different. The company was no longer frozen, But the air was thick with anticipation. Employees eyed us warily, uncertain if the truce would hold. My sister and I stood side by side in the boardroom, presenting a united front, but the memory of conflict lingered in every glance and whispered conversation. I knew trust would not return overnight. It would have to be earned, one decision at a time. We began by meeting with each department, listening to frustrations and ideas. Some colleagues were candid about their fears of instability, of choosing the wrong side, of losing their jobs. I acknowledged the chaos we had caused, admitting that our personal feud had threatened everyone's future. My sister did the same, her voice steady, her words measured. We promised transparency, shared leadership, and a renewed commitment to the company's mission. It was not a grand speech, but it was honest. That honesty, I hoped, would be the start of something better. The days that followed were filled with hard work. We reviewed stalled projects, reconnected with clients, and reached out to partners who had grown distant during the turmoil. Some relationships could not be salvaged, but others showed cautious optimism. There were setbacks, moments of tension between my sister and me, disagreements over strategy, reminders of the wounds that still needed time to heal. But there were also small victories, a successful pitch, a grateful employee, a shared laugh that felt almost like old times outside the office. I tried to rebuild my life. I reached out to friends I had neglected, spent time with family, and allowed myself to reflect on what I had learned. The experience had changed me. I saw now how pride and fear could twist even the strongest bonds, how easy it was to lose sight of what truly mattered. My sister and I began to meet outside work, talking not about business, but about our lives, our memories, our hopes for the future. It was awkward at first, but slowly, the walls between us began to crumble. One evening, as we walked through the city, she stopped and looked at me. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said. "I just wanted to be seen." Her words stayed with me. I realized how much I had taken for granted, how little I had understood her struggles. I apologized not just for the fight, but for all the times I had failed to listen. She forgave me. And in that moment, something shifted. The past could not be erased, but it no longer defined us. The company stabilized. Profits began to recover, morale improved, and new opportunities emerged. Our partnership was different now, more cautious, but also more respectful. We disagreed often, but we did so openly. Without fear of betrayal, the board noticed the change, and so did our employees. Slowly, trust returned, fragile but growing stronger with each passing day. Looking back, I understood that the real victory was not saving the company, but saving ourselves from bitterness and regret. We had faced the worst in each other and chosen to rebuild. The scars remained, but they were reminders of what we had overcome, not what we had lost. On the anniversary of the company's founding, we held a small celebration. My mother was there, beaming with pride. As I stood beside my sister, surrounded by colleagues and friends, I felt a quiet sense of gratitude. We had survived the storm, not unchanged, but stronger. The company was ours again, not just in name, but in spirit. As the evening ended, my sister raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said. I smiled, knowing that for the first time in a long while, I truly believed in them.